Welcome to Esoteric Essays, revealing humanity's biggest secrets, one essay at a time. Seek and ye shall find.
Hi everybody, how you doing today? That's right, you read the title of this video correctly. I am going to explain to you everything about Area 51 and how it connects to ancient lost underground cities that the Aztec and the Native Americans speak about in their legends. So this is going to be a very interesting video. I highly advise everybody to watch it through to the end because I'm probably going to throw in tidbits of other information that deal with other weird mysteries that have been hidden from us, and I just sort of drop them in because they're all sort of connected. And first of all, I need to explain to you who I am. My name's James, right there, and I am the author of a series of essays that I have published all over the internet, primarily in my Facebook group called Esoteric Essays. Like right here. I'm going to leave a QR code probably right there. And all you need to do is scan that with your phone, and it'll take you to the group page, and you ask to join, and within normally a few minutes, maybe an hour or two, I'll accept all of the requests. It's a lot easier to talk to me there than it is here because of their messaging system and everything. But if anybody here has a better platform for me to use, I'll take any suggestions you have. I highly recommend that everybody who's watching this join this group so you could read all 13 essays that I have written to date. They expand much further on all of these weird topics, and they try to explain how they interconnect together. And what you're watching right now is a reading of Esoteric Essay number 4. Like I said, there's 13 to date, and these can be found and read for free by joining the group. But there's also here on YouTube Esoteric Essay video number 1 and 2, and these are the readings of essay number 1 and 2, so it's very easy to understand. But before I get to the essay, I would like to ask everybody watching this to like, share, and subscribe, and also comment. I'll try to answer all the comments here, but it would really be helpful if you like and subscribe. It helps me share this message with more people. So, okay, let's get to the essay now. Esoteric Essay number 4, Area 51, What's Really Underground and Its Connections to AZTLAN, the AZTECA, and the QUETZALCOATL. I have come to these conclusions from my personal experiences and my research that include maps, ancient, old, and new, including the esoteric and hidden, ancient esoteric writings from various secret libraries, church documents, both public and hidden, ancient Azteca codices in the public domain and in private hands, Aztec and Mayan hieroglyphs, Native American myths, legends, and oral histories, and their petroglyph trails, along with some books, newspaper accounts, and articles from the past. This paper is written in the hopes to explain this mysterious, top-secret military base, why it's located in the place it is, and what it's really hiding. I will also try to explain how the military really found a hoard of ancient, lost high technology from a long-lost and forgotten civilization once called AZTLAN by the Azteca, Maya, and Olmec. The Native Americans also speak of these things in their oral histories and highly guarded indigenous teachings. The name given to this site, Area 51, by the Native Americans was Shinaba. One of the very first accounts of something very strange and unexplainable in this deserted area came in the middle 1800s, 1848 or thereabouts. During this time, there were thousands of people working their way west from the St. Louis area to California. One of these wagon trains broke off from the rest of the groups and went a different way on their own. This group ended up traveling through the area once known as Death Valley, the Valley of Death. There's a reason that no one ever goes through this area and why no one ever found all this stuff. When this group finally made it to California, They had an amazing story about finding a giant, lost, destroyed city in the middle of the desert. Now, I used to live about a mile or two from the ranch that these people came to in California when they got out of the desert in Death Valley. So I'll put a picture of the historical marker. I mean, this is such an important event in them rescuing these people from the desert that they actually have a historical marker marking this ranch that used to be there in California, in Valencia, California, right by Magic Mountain. Magic Mountain. But I'll put a picture of that right there. They claimed they saw destroyed structures made of huge stones. They said there were petroglyphs all over the canyons and lots of Native American relics and ruins all over the place. But absolutely no sign of life whatsoever. One person said in a journal that I was given access to, the giant ruins were vitrified. He said it looked like this place was deliberately destroyed by something and parts of the stones were partially turned to glass. This phenomenon is also present in many other ancient sites all over South America and the rest of the world. I'll try to find some pictures of this and put them up here. This vitrification is evidence of ancient lost technology and ancient weapons. I go into a lot of this ancient weapon stuff in a lot of the essays, so I highly encourage you to read those essays or to watch the videos that correlate with them that I have posted here. I will try to find and post some pictures of this phenomenon from other sites as an example. Not a single person believed these frontiersmen, and the story they told was quickly forgotten. There was a very old newspaper article about this on the net years and years ago, and then it magically disappeared. It's hard to find. I still can't find it again. It might still be out there somewhere, and hopefully one of you can find it again. I'd like your help with that, man. I know some of you guys are some determined investigators. That's why I love you guys. So if you could find it for me again, it would be helpful. Some of you are amazing researchers, and I'd love your help finding this article again. I know where the journal is located, but I just can't find the old newspaper article that pretty much corroborates the journal. Help here would be appreciated. I mean, that's why the picture of that marker, the historical marker, that sort of corroborates this. They're just not telling you the whole story on the marker. Okay. Now we have to fast forward a few decades to about 1930, give or take a year or two. This account was told by a couple of miners that were out in the Death Valley area looking for gold in old mines. This story and account can be read in full in a very scarce book that I insist was removed from circulation to cover up and hide this fantastical story. The name of this book is Death Valley Men, right here. And it was written by Mr. Burke Lee. This book is extremely rare and often sells for hundreds of dollars. In this book, once this video is popular, it will be thousands of dollars. Watch. In this book, the author recounts the story he was told by these miners. The abridged version of their story goes like this. The miners claimed that while they were in Death Valley, they came across what they thought was an old gold mine. These miners started digging around when the floor gave away, and they ended up falling into a very large and old tunnel cavern system. They said this thing went for miles and miles. They claimed they also found huge rooms and areas full of lots of wonderfully weird things. They said the first room they went into reminded them of a Masonic temple. They claimed that there were Masonic-like symbols all over the walls. They explored further, and they said they came across a room full of extremely large mummies, like giant mummies, like really large ones. They said they saw huge giant swords and other huge weird weapons. They said they saw weird things like giant statues made of gold and other metals, sort of standing guard over certain rooms. Is this ancient lost technology? Let's keep reading. Maybe they're robots or something. It's curious, these stories. One room was supposed to be full of long dead animals like saber-toothed tigers and possibly dinosaurs. I write an essay all about dinosaurs that I think you will all be very fascinated about, because these are the genetically modified animal hybrids that they talk about in the Bible and all the ancient texts and literature. And we started calling them dinosaurs to cover up what they really were. But that's in essay number, I think, 8. I'll put the little title right here so you know. But back to this, because I'm getting sidetracked. But I love the dinosaurs, so I had to talk a little bit about them. There is more to this story, and if you want to read the full thing, you have to track down the book. There are videos on YouTube that speak of this. Searching something like Death Valley Underground City, and you'll find a few videos that talk about this and the book. The story sorta ends like this. The miners went back to Los Angeles and told some government officials about this and tried to return with a large group of people. They claimed in the book that the miners could not find the entrance to the site again, so everyone went home and figured the miners made this all up. This is a lie in the very beginning of the cover-up. So, first of all, everyone needs to understand this. At this time, there was no official Death Valley. Like nothing official. Just a huge area that they called Death Valley, or the Valley of Death. And they called it that because no one could go through there. They would die. You could not cross through it unless you knew very secret things that led you to very secret water and springs. And some of them are protected today, all around Vegas and it, by like national parks and stuff. And I'll go more into those later. But if you didn't know where those special secret water supplies were and everything, it was impossible to get through this area. You would die. The animals would die. There was everybody. So that's why they called it Death Valley, the Valley of Death. And it was way bigger than the little national park they have today. And it went into Nevada, California. Some people talked about it like in Arizona and Utah, part of it too. But a huge amount of Death Valley, the original thing, was in Nevada. And now it's not called Death Valley anymore. It's called Area 51, and it's closed. And Death Valley's over there now in California. So, okay. So at this time, there was no official Death Valley. It was not until the year 1933 when Death Valley was officially named and given borders. Before this time, this area was still known as Death Valley by the locals, but it was much, much larger, and it went deep into Nevada as well. I claim to have seen and read private journals that tell a more true version of this story. These miners went back with the local authorities and showed them this really fantastical stuff, and at this point the local authorities contacted the United States government, and they got involved and immediately shut down and covered this up. The Death Valley Men book was published, and when the government found out about the book, they immediately suppressed it. But a few thousand copies made it out and were sold, and are possibly still out there for the little treasure hunter, inquisitive person in the know to go find and buy before they skyrocket in price. Like the Black Book. What's it called? The Black Book that talks about Jesse James not really dying and who he really was and how he lived longer. But more about that book later. The United States government quickly set out people to investigate these areas, including all the surrounding areas in Nevada and its surrounding states. I had brief access to another journal from one of these very explorers. They sent out a few teams, and the things they found were amazing. The government quickly closed off numerous areas and plopped military bases on them. This was done to keep any and all searchers away from these areas. The proof is in the dates that all of these bases were first opened. They were all opened after these discoveries in the 30s. This is not a coincidence. Back to the journal. This person said they found things like Native American petroglyphs. They found dozens of Native American artifacts, weird destroyed ruins. They talked about a site in Nevada near a dry lake bed where they found a huge cave in the mountains that looked man-made. They spoke of seeing huge skeletons of giants of a massive size lying dead, partially burned in piles of weird gray silty sand. They claimed to have found giant blocks that almost looked like they were made of a smooth, weirdly sparkling, colorful glass, until they looked closer and realized that these were really large stone blocks that were vitrified and sort of melted and turned to glass. These blocks looked like they, at one point in time, went together and used to be part of a large building or structure of some kind. They said it looked like these things were blown up by a massive explosion a long, long time ago. This explorer did not have first-hand accounts of the underground discoveries, but they did mention another group's discoveries. This person knew another group member, and he speaks of things that this person told him about at a dinner one night. This person was with the group who entered a cave. They walked for miles and miles. The walls were extremely smooth but not natural. They ended up walking up to a giant hole in the ground. They looked down and saw a huge mummified giant lying on a giant stone altar. They could not believe what they were seeing. There were 12 more of these mummies arranged in a circle. The largest mummy in the center of the circle of mummies had a giant sword on his chest, and it was covered in a fine dust. The sword was huge. When the explorer rubbed some of the dust off, he said he got a really weird, tingly feeling in his finger. His head and his vision went all blurry. After a minute or two, he was okay. He looked at the sword closer, keeping his distance not to touch it again. He said that the sword was made out of this weird, greenish, rainbow-looking metal that sort of sparkled in a way that made it look like it was almost liquid and moving, but it wasn't. The author of the journal had a hard time explaining this metal, and basically said it was supposed to be really weird. Remember, he was recounting his colleague's oral story in his journal. It's like these people were intentionally kept apart, with certain people exploring only one area and that area alone, like compartmentalized intentionally. So that's what they do. They still do this stuff today. I mean, you have people who come out and are whistleblowers that talk about like Area 51 and all these secret places, and they say that they compartmentalize them on purpose. Bob Lazar's a famous guy for talking about this, and he's like, one person works on the propulsion, one person works on the metal, one person works on these fiber optic weird things, and nobody knows what they're really working on. And these journals make it sound like that's what they did to these people too, but they sort of talked when they were together, and these are recounting some of this. The explorer that wrote this journal said he had a hard time believing this, and this guy told him if he thought this was weird, that another person told him that another group found a cave by a dry lake bed that was not really a cave, and it had 3 giant floating pure silver pie tins inside of it. Remember, this was a long time ago, so pie tins were like, they knew what pie tins were. Pie tins, like if you go to Marie Callender's and order one of their pies, that metal, that's a pie tin. If you don't know, for the younger kids who don't know what a pie tin is. He said these things must be worth a fortune because they thought they were silver. They thought this thing was made of pure silver. He said these things were just sort of sitting there in the middle of this giant building in the mountain. He said there were 3 and one looked different than the others. This one was not floating. He said it was on the ground, sort of resting there, lying on its side. He said the other 2 were just floating in the air a few feet off the ground. He said it was, hold on. He said the other 2 were just floating in the air a few feet off the ground above holes in the ground that were a few feet wide. These holes went deep, deep underground. They claimed to hear or feel a weird humming sound, or feeling. They claimed to have heard or felt a weird humming sound or feeling the closer they got to the silver pie tins. They touched one and instantly got a little shock. His head tingled and eyes got all weird. He said the giant pie tin felt like it was ice cold and basically weightless. When he pushed on it, it sort of wiggled a little, but quickly settled right back where it was. It was like pushing on nothing. The government guy came in and saw these and instantly told everyone to get out and leave. He told everyone they were forbidden to speak of this to anyone, and this was a matter of national security. The author of the journal basically says the next day they did not go back out to the desert. At breakfast, they were all given dozens of papers that they had to sign. After this, they were all taken back to the Los Angeles area by dozens of cars that sort of magically showed up in a large caravan. There were a few more entries in the journal about normal everyday life, but nothing more about what they discovered or saw. You can tell that sometime over the years a little kid must have been bored and found the journal, because some of the pages had childish writing and pictures drawn in crayon over some of the entries from the explorer. It did. I mean, this journal pretty much corroborates the stories told in the Death Valley Men book that was published and suppressed. The Native Americans have a legend that talks all about this exact location. They say there is a large hole in the ground that leads to a huge cavern system. If you travel deep into this hole, you will come to a huge, magical city of sparkling gold that's full of weird beings and wonders. They have told this story for thousands of years. Some Native Americans named this underground city Shinava. Others have used different names. The Aztec would consider this part of ancient AZTLAN, one of 7 such underground cities located here in the United States Southwest. This underground city was actually introduced to the general public in the late 60s in the weirdest way possible. This underground city, Shinava, was actually talked about in one of the most popular and famous books written in the last 100 years. It's very popular, and they talk about this exact thing, but they make it sound like a joke. This book is widely available to this very day. The book I am speaking about is Helter Skelter, written by Vincent Bugliosi. In this book, they talk about this underground city briefly. This is actually the real reason Mr. Charles Manson was caught in Death Valley out at Barker Ranch. It's not really clear who Charles Manson heard this from, because he has changed his story once, and he claimed a miner told him, and once he said a Native American told him about this long-lost underground city in Death Valley. The truth here is lost forever, seeing Mr. Charlie Manson is now passed away and dead. I added that. But there's a very weird tie to Charles Manson. I'm going to read this, and if I don't add enough, I'll add some more at the end of this. But there's a weird tie to Charles Manson with this underground city. He spent a long time out there looking for it. Most people don't know the true story of Charles Manson. They just know the name and the crime. Very quickly, I will try to summarize the story. Manson was basically a cult leader who was originally claiming to be a fallen angelic being with special knowledge and abilities, a divine being. This man claimed to be a fallen angelic. This man actually had the Bible pretty much memorized. Yeah, he did. He's a very intelligent person. He quickly gained a lot of followers, and they decided that little Charlie was not really one of the fallen, and basically started worshiping him as the reincarnation of Jesus, and some considered him God. Which they did. Which he was neither. Yep, he wasn't. The fallen angel is much more likely and would explain his crimes. There's a lot to Mr. Charles Manson and MK Ultra, his connections to the CIA, another satanic group from Europe called the Process, or the Church of the Process or something, that also deals in mind control and a lot of stuff. Mr. Charles Manson did a lot of the stuff he did because he was in these MK Ultra programs, and that's starting to come to light, and a lot of people didn't know a lot of this. A lot of the serial killers had ties to this. So did the Son of Sam killers. There's more than one. It's not just Mr. David Berkowitz. And there's weird connections with lots of these guys. The Unabomber, he was messed with by an MK Ultra guy when he was like a teenager in Harvard or whatever school he went to. He was a brilliant genius and he got screwed with for years. But I need to write an essay all about that, but there's a lot of this. That's why Charles Manson's connected to this, because the CIA was connected to Mr. Charlie. But I put the fallen angel is much more likely and would explain his crimes. After a few years, Charlie grew this cult to a pretty large crowd. He was fighting with many Hollywood celebrities. A lot of connections to Hollywood celebrities that you don't know, and him supplying LSD to the celebrities for the CIA and child prostitutes to the celebrities so they could blackmail them. Lots of weird stuff that nobody knows about. Charles Manson was well known in both the music industry and in Hollywood, and they hide all these connections, like Candace Bergman. They rarely talk about all this stuff. He supplied numerous very famous celebrities both drugs and underage prostitutes. There was a lot more going on with this man than you were told, and there are famous people today that would be in lots of trouble if the real truth were to come out. These celebrities basically lied and stole from Charlie, the Beach Boys, among others, because he was a pretty talented musician in a way. I mean, some of his stuff was trash, but some of it the Beach Boys actually stole and used for themselves and really didn't give him any credit. That's why he was mad at them. And backstab, so it said, many of them basically lied and stole from Charlie, the Beach Boys among others, and backstabbed him. So he figured a good way to get back at all of them would be to kill as many rich white celebrities as possible and make it look like black people in the Black Panther Party did it. This would cause a horrible race war that would completely destroy the entire country and the United States government. The Manson family committed these murders, and then Manson took them to Death Valley. He told them about the underground city, and his plan was to flee to the desert, find the entrance to the underground city, and they were supposed to live in the city and wait out all the carnage and destruction that the race war had caused, that they had started. When everything was over, they would reemerge and rebuild the world on their own as the leaders. That's what his plan was, and it all revolved around this underground city. Side note. I like side notes. And by the way, if you go to the group, there's not just the 13 essays. There's like 4 or 5 things. They're shorter essays that I call side notes. So those are there too. There's one about Bruce Lee and why he really got killed, and a lot of other things like the secret super spies that are in the United States working for other countries in broad daylight. So there's lots of those too. There was one about MK Ultra and how they're mind controlling people and using a lot of subliminals and drugs and weird stuff. So all that's in the group too. So, but here's a side note in this essay. I said Charles Manson was more the fallen angel type. I think there's much more here than anyone wants to see or believe. You can see very weird satanic and occult ties to these murders too. Charles killed the pregnant wife of the guy who made Rosemary's Baby. This movie was about a guy doing a satanic ceremony with his wife in order to get her pregnant with the Antichrist. Not a coincidence that little Charlie killed this lady, people. Ties to MK Ultra and the government's secret occult experiments. Much more about this in another essay, but this is worth looking into further, just so you guys know that. Charles Manson actually really did find the entrance to this long lost and forgotten city, but there was now a huge giant problem. Yep, I'll show you pictures, I've been there. This entrance is now entirely flooded and completely impossible to enter. Charles sat at this exact spot 3 days trying to figure out how to drain and get into it. It's impossible, so he abandoned that plan and they traveled a few miles back to Barker Ranch, where they were caught a few days later. Charles and all of his family members have spoken of this, and the media dismisses it immediately as a joke. The ravings of a madman and a group of crazy idiots and hippies. Then they quickly changed the subject. He was right all along, and I have been to the site. You can go as well, and if you come to Las Vegas, I will personally take you there. There is massive security guarding the entire place. This site is now known as Devil's Hole. It is in Nevada, directly in between what they now call Death Valley and Area 51. Like almost right in the middle. But I will post some pictures of this place. If you want to see more, you're going to need to ask me. Sorry, it's in here. I have like 70 pictures and all the fencing and security, so I'm going to put them all over the place. They're probably appearing already. The official story of Devil Hole is this. Devil's Hole is located in Nevada. You can go there today for yourself. I have been many times. The hole is really an underground cavern system that is completely collapsing in on itself and totally flooded. It's basically a huge underwater cave system that has a very rare and endangered fish living in it. That's what they tell us. This is why the government says the site is highly monitored, off limits, and protected today. I mean, look at the security. Look at these fences. Look at all this stuff. This is to protect this little itty bitty fish that lives in this weird underground flooded cavern system in the middle of the driest, hottest place on the planet. None of this makes any sense at all. The above I claim is an absolute lie meant to mislead the public and hide a giant secret. This is the real entrance that the Native Americans spoke of in their oral legends. This place was not always flooded. No, maybe even the government caused it to be flooded. This is something that we should all look into, people. I actually suspect that the United States military actually set off explosions long ago when they first found these sites in order to flood this entrance and make it impossible to enter the city. But I don't know, that's just me wondering. They already have their entrance out at Groom Lake, so they destroyed this one intentionally. The legend and story of this entrance is pretty well known in some circles, and this is why it's fenced off and highly monitored. That's why you see all this security all over the place. I mean, they're not protecting a little fish, and they could care less if somebody jumps in there and dies. I mean, they would. This is millions of dollars worth of security and fencing, and electronics and monitoring devices. So something's going on here. I actually believe you're placed on a watch list the second you visit this site. Just warning you before you go. The security is astounding for a flooded hole in the ground. In the middle of nowhere. This is the middle of nowhere, people. In the desert that's hot as hell. That most people would never even want to go to in the first place. This place is monitored by numerous high-def facial recognition cameras. There are microphones, weird scanners. All of this is powered by solar power. There is cage-like fencing with razor wire. The fence looks like a jail and must have cost millions of dollars. There are cameras on the top of the surrounding mountains that are looking down at the site. Yep, those are harder to get pictures of, but if you go there and look with binoculars and stuff, you can see the cameras, and they're looking straight at the site, and they're up on the mountains. All of this is to protect an endangered fish. This is a total lie. See, I put it in the essay. The government flooded this entrance and is still monitoring it to see who goes there and why, and keep people from trying to swim inside of it. I mean, the people who know what this is, they'll try to go in there. I mean, they'll die, but they'll still try. Here's another side note. I live in Vegas, so if any of you ever come out here, I can personally take you to this site and show you around and point out all the security. The second you see this place in person, none of the visual story makes sense. No, it's really hard to show you this in pictures, what's really happening at this place. Now let's jump to the Aztec. This culture also speaks of this city under Groom Lake. It's actually pictured on very ancient maps. It is. This has never made sense, seeing nothing was out there where it was labeled on the map, but the names are there. I honestly can't remember the name of the city on the map, and I can't find it again, but it was widely available online, and when I find it, I'll add a picture to this post. The city started with the letters TECH, I think. This is wrong, and I found it. I'll change. You're going to see the change here, and if not, I'll put it in on the little notes up here. The actual name of the city, the word, is split on the map. The city is directly on top of the Groom Lake Area 51 area. The Aztecs spoke of these ancient underground cities as well. This is all part of AZTLAN, and everything found here used to belong to the being they once called the Quetzalcoatl. This is not the main part of AZTLAN, only a small part. This civilization was huge. The Aztecs speak of 7 huge underground cities, and they are all supposed to be connected by large underground tunnel systems. I claim another one of these systems is located under and near the Grand Canyon, and this was also found, pillaged, and hidden by the United States government and the Smithsonian in the early 1900s. I think in 1910. This site was discovered by a man named G.E. Kincaid, and there are numerous newspaper articles that tell this story. To read more about this, Google Citadel under the Grand Canyon or Grand Canyon Underground City. And on YouTube, there's videos that go into all this too, to tell a little bit about this. These military bases were placed where they were to hide these ancient forgotten places. Dugway Proving Ground in Utah would probably be another one of these underground cities, and quite possibly Archuleta Mesa in Dulce, New Mexico. There are even more sites and underground cities that I will talk about later on, but I've still sort of kept some of that. I haven't written about all of them. Okay, enough about the other underground cities and back to Area 51. I will read more about the other ones later. I'm sorry. I claim that there is a reason that the government chose the places they did to test our nuclear weapons. First off, the Nevada test site is in the middle of nowhere, right next to Area 51, but it would actually be safer for the public to do. But it would actually be safer for the public to do this over the ocean, Bikini Atoll. They chose the Nevada test site for a reason, for the nuclear testing. There were ancient, very large megalithic ruins all over the place in this location and the surrounding areas. The government chose this area to test our nukes in order to destroy as many of the ruins that were visible and just lying around on the ground, above ground. They wiped the evidence from the earth with nukes. See, it's very convenient when you want to hide something. The underground part, it's already hidden, and that's where all the good stuff is. And then the ancient structures and ruins above ground that are already destroyed. Well, let's just light off some nukes all around and just destroy the living crap out of everything, and then no one can even walk around there, and then we can get underground in our area like 20 or 30 miles away. I mean, that's what's going on out there. Okay. So, the government chose this area to test our nukes in order to destroy as many of the ruins that were visible and just lying around on the ground. They wiped away the evidence from they wiped away the evidence off the face of the earth with nukes. They also made this area impossible to visit, research, or explore basically ever again. This land is toxic and you will die. If you go here to explore any small remnants that might be left lying on the ground. So I mean, it's toxic now in a lot of places. That's another reason why this base is closed off. They did a horrible amount of nuclear testing. They did testing with lots of very advanced chemicals that they knew nothing about. And they did a lot of damage, and it's highly polluted. That's why no one can even go there. I mean, it's not just They don't want you to see something. They don't want you to get into something, see what they did, and end up dying or coming out of dying with these horrible ailments and diseases. One of my friends, a family member, has actually snuck onto the base, and there's some reports about it. They know he did it. It's been years and years and years ago. And he traveled across this thing for days, and they never caught him. And he came back out, and he talked about it. And, I mean, maybe I'll put something up about it, but I don't want to really out my friend, because it's his relative. But like I said, it's out there. And he died like a year or two later from a bunch of weird cancers that he got magically out of nowhere. Because I'm telling you, the ground's highly toxic, and that's another reason why it's all locked down. So, so you'll die if you go there and explore any small remnants that might be left lying around on the ground. Bob Lazar, the man who was originally set up and used by the government to reveal some of this misinformation about aliens being tied to these UFOs, he once said a very interesting thing in one of his videos that can still be viewed on YouTube. I highly suggest everyone look for this. I'll try to put a little link here or something. I'll figure out a way. You should watch this and see what he says. Where am I? Bob Lazar clearly says in one interview with Joe Rogan that he really had no clue if the alien stuff that the government told him was true or a lie and misinformation. He said that he could personally vouch for the dish-shaped craft and the actual machines, but he said he had no real clue where they came from other than what he was told. He then looked at Joe Rogan and said something like, the only other thing he ever overheard were two people, scientists or somebody, talking one day, and one of them said that the craft were not alien in origin and that they were really found out in near Groom Lake during an archaeological dig, like years and years ago. Like, this is one of the stories that he heard. And he says this in the Joe Rogan interview. And I highly encourage everybody to go find this and listen to it. Because he says it, and they both go, huh? Archaeological dig? Wait a minute. That means this might be really old and not from outer space. And they talk about it for a second, and then they dismiss it too. But this is like the only truthful thing that Bob Lazar's like ever really revealed, other than they were testing something. I mean, all the stuff about aliens, that was the misinformation stuff from the government. Bob Lazar actually says this exact thing, and if you watch all the interview, you'll stumble upon. If you watch all of his interviews, you'll stumble upon yourself. Seek and you shall find. So at this point, when I wrote this, I couldn't find the interview, but I found it recently, and I have it posted in the group, a link to it, so all my group members could see what I was talking about. That's another reason you should join the group too. If you go to Blythe, Arizona, you can see the intaglios that are on the ground. These are like petroglyphs, but they are on the ground and meant to be seen from the sky. I mean, why would they be meant to be seen from the sky? I would connect more of this in the other essays. There are a bunch of these, and they all have meanings. One is a huge representation of the Aztec god named Quetzalcoatl. He's playing the flute, the Pied Piper. What would we do here? Follow. Let's follow where these things lead. That's what I did. If you follow the Aztec god, the Quetzalcoatl, the intaglio that's on the ground, it leads you to the Grapevine Canyon petroglyphs in Nevada. If you follow these, they lead you to more petroglyphs in and around the surrounding areas in and around Las Vegas, Nevada. These will lead you to three places. One is Death Valley, one is Area 51, well, as close as you can get to it because it's all fenced off, but it leads you that way. And the last is the Valley of Fire and the Grand Canyon area. The problem is the closer you get to the more impossible it is to go any further. Every one of these trails lead directly to highly guarded military bases, highly guarded private land that like secret society members and their corporations owned and they've closed off. And they're extremely forbidden and monitored native sacred land. Like the Native Americans, they have their little secret land with all these ruins and proof of all this. And you can't get on those either. So you can only go so far. And then, boop, you're stuck. You can't go no more. So, who is this Quetzalcoatl character? I talked about him in essay number 2 a little bit. And it's in the video essay number 2, so you should read that or go watch the video. It'll explain a little bit more, but here we go here. This is a hard thing to explain. I talked about this character in other essays. The Quetzalcoatl was the god of the Aztec, Maya, Olmec, and many other cultures in South America long ago. I speak of this being in my esoteric essay number 2. There are many depictions of the Quetzalcoatl riding in his flying machines in the hieroglyphs in the ruins of South America. Some of these have been known by different names, but these are all the same, being once known as the Quetzalcoatl. The Aztecs spoke of the Quetzalcoatl first coming to them from a land far away that was destroyed. He arrived in a flying machine. These are the same exact flying machines that were found a few thousand miles away in the area we now call Area 51. This being was known by many names in South American cultures. He was the god Amaru in Turkey. I didn't mean Turkey, I meant Peru. But no one's caught that yet. But I'll be honest, I messed it up in the essay. So, and this is really where the word America really comes from. The story you are told about Amerigo Vespucci is a lie. The Incas called this being Viracocha. The Aztecs named him the Quetzalcoatl. I've said this before, and I'll write more about this later, but the Mormons believe the Quetzalcoatl is really Jesus, and he visited the Americas in his missing years. That's not true. I'll go more into that too. Then we get to the Freemasons' belief that the Quetzalcoatl is the reincarnated soul of the fallen angel they worship, Lucifer, Moroni, Morningstar. I am here to say that this is the truth and that I have witnessed, seen, and figured out through my investigations and studies. This is what I have seen and figured out through my investigations and studies. I have been to these sites and hundreds of others. I've been to Area 51 a lot of times. As far as you can go, I went all the way around everywhere. They chased me around. I mean, I've done a lot of crazy stuff. There are many, many more secrets being hidden from you, and these are buried here in the Americas as well. The rumor that the beautiful Cleopatra and Mark Antony died in Egypt is a lie, and they are really buried somewhere here in this continent, along with the very famous and very missing Alexander the Great. Someone actually thinks they found the tomb of Alexander Helios, the son of Cleopatra and Mark Antony, in Illinois. This is not the actual tomb, it's something else that is related to the Egyptians, but it is not the tomb. The tombs are here in the Americas, but in an entirely different location. That I will not disclose at this point for various reasons. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you it. I will write more about this and its connections to all of this in a future essay. I think that's essay number 9, where I talk a lot about Cleopatra having a lot to do with Oak Island and this whole mysterious thing that they're digging around looking for, trying to explain. And they've been digging here for hundreds and hundreds of years. And except it goes back all the way to Cleopatra, and she beat them all to all this because she has access to all these ancient maps and writings from the Library of Alexandria. And I mean, she was like the head of the mystery school, so she had access to everything. That's why she cleared out all the tombs, all the cool stuff in Egypt. That's why they're all empty. She did it and disappeared with 50,000 Egyptians and a fleet of ships before the Romans came. I write about all that in essay number 9. And I really start out in a lot of this lies that's going on with Oak Island. But Oak Island connects to this, and so does Cleopatra. That's why I'm talking about her here. Cleopatra was in Area 51 2,000 years ago. And the Knights Templar were in Area 51 like 1,000 years ago. And they're all looking for all these ancient underground cities and all these lost treasures and stuff. And they've had maps that have led them to these certain areas, but they didn't understand what they were looking at, or they couldn't get into it. And they still can't get into a lot of it. And that's why a lot of these treasures and stuff are still missing. And that's why they're guarding certain areas so no one can go there, but they can't access it either. I write a lot more about this in all my essays, so hopefully you all come join the group. But this one's almost done right here. The tombs are here in the Americas, but in an entirely different location. That I will not disclose at this point for various reasons. I will write more about this and its connection to all of this in a future essay. Cleopatra was the head of the mystery schools, so she had access to all the ancient Atlantean maps and writings, and she knew all about the Americas and what was really once here. Again, more on this topic later. I'm going to stop here because this is getting long. Thanks again for reading my essays. I do have my own private group here on Facebook where I post all of my essays first. Then I post them publicly in other groups. If you want to see my other posts and essays, please feel free to ask me in the comments or questions and PM me, and I will send you a link to the group. It's called Esoteric Essays. Scan the QR code. Thanks again for taking the time to read this or watch this video. Thank you very much. I appreciate it like crazy, man. And if you have learned anything here or think this is interesting, I just ask you please to share, like, subscribe. Please help me get this message out there to as many people as I can. I mean, I've dedicated a huge amount of my life now to this, trying to piece this all together and just reveal it to people, because all the stuff they tell us is nonsense, and it don't make no sense, and that's why it don't make no sense. They're lying about certain things. But thanks again for taking the time to watch and read this. I'm working on more essays as we speak about other topics that connect to this huge puzzle. Like I said, there's 13 essays to date and 5 or 6 side notes, plus a bunch of posts. You should read the comments. I mean, I say a lot of things in the comments. I've expanded more on this video about a lot of this than what I've written, so watch the videos too, because they're important. I'll put more information in them. I beg you all to research everything for yourself. Please do not just believe me, and do not just believe anybody else. I mean, take what I've said and go research it for yourself. See what you think. Just start there. But just don't believe me and don't believe anybody else. Believe yourself. Ask God for help. He'll help you. Believe God, but no one else. You just him and you. I have written for yourselves. Oh wait. I beg you all to research everything I have written for yourselves and make up your own minds about the things you have read. Don't take me or anyone else at your word and investigate. Feel free to PM me and ask any questions. Written by me, James Mazzio, the chubby guy, and I'm about to start losing a lot of weight because I'm drinking some stuff that I've concocted. Try to help me with, I've had heart problems and pancreas problems, so that's why my weight has bloop. But I promise I've really been to all these places, man. I've hiked and walked hundreds and hundreds of miles out in the desert, driven thousands of miles all over. Yeah. Now I'm a little fat, but just keep watching. It's about to go down. I'm sorry. But written by me, and my Facebook group is Esoteric Essays. But thank you again for watching this, and please like and share. Please subscribe. Okay, this video is really long, so I gotta go. Talk to you later. Bye. Peace.